Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another video on the Reaction channel. Trying to grow this channel. We're currently at 1 subscriber, so please like and subscribe. Main channel is Miles Talks Finance, where we are nearing 5,000. So just wanted to start this one up. But earnings this week and what this means for Nvidia. So obviously they typically beat earnings. This is a company that is expected to be earnings. You know, you would never expect less from this company. EPS is growing at an extremely fast pace. Same thing with revenue. And this is available May 20th. So this coming week, just in the next couple of days, we're going to see NVIDIA's earnings, whether we like it or not. They're very consistent. NVIDIA has a remarkably consistent track record of beating estimates. We see it actually beat EPS 21 of its last 23 quarters, and it also frequently exceeds revenue guidance from numbers from 3% all the way to 20%. We see NVIDIA beat earnings usually, so something to keep in mind when investing in NVIDIA. And the cycle can't go on forever. I do want to point that out, that NVIDIA is not going to be green forever. You know, right now it's awesome. I wouldn't say, you know, don't buy NVIDIA right now. I think that we're still in the cycle. We're still in this, obviously, this hyper cycle, or this hyper scaling cycle for NVIDIA. But this is not going to have, like 20 years from now, is NVIDIA going to be a good 20-year investment? Probably not. You know, you're probably going to underperform the overall market if you invest in NVIDIA for the next 20 years, but the next 5 years, maybe. So, I mean, we see hardware cycles right here. So NVIDIA has transitioned from a typical 2-year cycle to a highly accelerated 1-year release cadence. So NVIDIA is actually, you know, obviously building out this cycle for as long as they can. They have their Blackwell, they have their Rubin, they have a lot of things that are making them a ton of money, obviously. Same thing with their GeForce RTX. So consumer GPU releases historically operate on a 2-year cadence, which we've seen NVIDIA obviously stretch out for a very long time, and it's been very good for them. And a very, you know, telltale sign of this cycle is the semiconductor ETF, which usually does well, but this past, you know, few years it's just exploded. So past 5 years we're up almost 400%, not 4%. So I don't think it'll end anytime soon. I do think that we see this continue to grow, but who knows? You know, nobody knows. If I did know, then I would be a lot richer. But I do think that, you know, we do see this continue for a while, but at the end of the day, nobody knows exactly when it will end. And the video I wanted to watch today is about NVIDIA earnings, so let's get into this right here.
The NVIDIA story, generally speaking, has been about an unstoppable company, now the world's most valuable company that is growing its revenue.
Almost a $6 trillion market cap. And they did drop 4.4% on Friday. I think this is profit taking. You know, maybe some insider news came out that NVIDIA missed earnings, but I don't think so.
News at about 75 to 80%, is highly profitable, has unprecedented margins in an industry where the economics are really brutal. And in artificial intelligence, but you know, the commonality between NVIDIA and all of the companies that buy its chips, either to train AI models or to run them, is that the demand for that is outpacing NVIDIA's ability to supply it. And
that's great. Obviously, NVIDIA's bought out for years to come. But also, another thing that this reminded me of is companies like Amazon, companies like Meta, companies like Microsoft are currently spending a lot of money. Obviously, you look at their CapEx, but this is also to develop their own chip. So these companies want to develop their own chip eventually. They see this as the next big thing. As you know, for example, Amazon 20 years ago did not have AWS. Now it's the leading profit driver in their business. So this is to develop their own chip, and they're training these AI models, and eventually it's going to happen. So NVIDIA's demand is going to drop a lot when these companies develop their own chip, but nobody knows, you know, quite when that's going to happen exactly. But back to the video.
That's always a pretty healthy position to be in. But as you alluded to, the kind of unknown is China. And the state of play for NVIDIA is NVIDIA has a base case assumption until this point where there is no revenues coming from China. And so you guys tell me, what was the conclusion of
So we've been talking about it all morning, Ed. It's still...
People are going to worry about this, but I don't see it as a big deal. You know, I don't think we're going to see a long-term effect of no deals coming out of the visit to China. I don't think that's a big deal.
A little murky. Yeah. We don't know.
Yeah, and so the sell-off on Friday, that's the whole point. You know, it turns out you can get a last-minute seat on Air Force One to go to the president.
Seats are available. Get the jump seat.
But it doesn't guarantee you at the outcome that you wanted to going there.
But I mean, NVIDIA wasn't the only one to see a dip on Friday. You also saw Micron, Intel, a bunch of these tech stocks losing more than 5%.
A bunch of these tech stocks that are up hundreds of percent year to date, you know, and just in the past 5 years up multiple hundreds of percent. Keep in mind, they're down 5%.
percent. Is this because those valuations are not realistic and the rubber is starting to meet the road there? Is this signs of a bubble, or is this just signs of the inputs and the factors you were just talking about?
Yeah, probably a little bit just giving back after many, many weeks of what a lot of people in the markets were calling a melt up, right? And so like, you always have to think about relative performance. I love to stare at squiggly lines on charts. I know that like you guys probably saved the Bloomberg This Weekend audience from that, and I commend you for it. But sometimes you just got to look at the
We're an
squiggly
audio-first product, so they generally discourage us from using too many squiggly lines, because then we have to describe what people are seeing. But
I completely get it. So the squiggly line on Friday, as you quite rightly point out, was pretty sharply downward. But if you extrapolate out and look at NVIDIA in particular.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's completely right. If you look at NVIDIA over the past 5 years, you don't even know that Friday happened.
Particular since the end of March, it's just been on an astonishing run. I think it was up sort of 47% through Thursday's close, and all these other stocks that are associated with it had like a year's worth of gains in just a few weeks. Broadly speaking, equity markets kept hitting records. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100 is my favorite index because it's a tech-heavy one, and NVIDIA in the first 2 weeks of May accounts for most of that. So I think part of it was just saying, okay, we were about to have earnings. What did we actually learn from China? We're not sure. Everyone's kind of scratching their head. Everyone on Friday took a breather.
We were on air yesterday as details of some of these deliverables came across the terminal having to do with agriculture and tariffs. Are we still awaiting perhaps word on China's appetite for these NVIDIA chips? We saw Jensen Huang supping noodles around Beijing and enjoying the local scenery and all of that. But is he or North?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is more of a publicity thing, too, than to make deals. I mean, obviously, that was the hope coming out of it. And I think a few deals were made, actually, with NVIDIA's chips. So it's not all bad. You got to think that actually something did come out of it, which I very well could see nothing coming out of that.
Are they still optimistic that there could be some announcement here in the days ahead?
What the president said was that he discussed the issue of H200, which is a depowered variant of, or a lower power variant of a prior generation of chip that NVIDIA makes, not its latest chip. And the president, as the president puts it, China's not interested really because they want to support their own domestic industry and their own domestic chips. And so like the reason that I was joking, but the reason everyone's saying, well, what was the net outcome of that trip is nothing's changed. The US had already licensed NVIDIA to be able to allow to export their chips from the US to China on a technical basis. Jensen said in March.
So we see China is not that concerned. They don't want NVIDIA's chips as much as, you would think they do, because they want to support their own economy. They don't want to pour millions and trillions and billions of dollars into the U.S. economy through buying NVIDIA's chips, which makes a lot of sense.
I've got orders from Chinese companies, but it isn't up to either of those people, the president of the United States or Jensen Huang. China isn't allowing them to do this yet. And so, again, it's a base case assumption of zero.
Ed, before we let you go, we've only got about a minute left, but you are heading to Vegas for the Dell Technologies World Conference. You're going to speak to Jensen Huang along with Dell CEO Michael Dell. What are you expecting, and what should we be on the lookout for?
Yeah, they're very close business partners, very close personal relationship. Dell assembles servers. Servers go into data centers, and it's as simple as that. And, historically, NVIDIA didn't sell its chips directly to the market. It needed Dell to sell to all kinds of companies. They're trying to make the idea of owning your own data center great again. What we call on-prem, but don't rely on cloud computing companies. Build your own. And that's kind of a bit of what the story will be. But please tune in and I welcome audience questions. You know where to find me. I always love it when you guys submit your questions too.
Let me just pick up on this quickly.
I don't know if you want my questions, but probably David's.
But this is the thing now. We have Jensen Huang with another CEO. They sit down and compliment. This is something that they really like. NVIDIA likes to play up, the point of partnership.
If you look at how many partners NVIDIA has, it's crazy, and they need that for their business to do well. Which
stating, I have no idea if it's a part of the deal, a part of the contract between one company and another. But Jensen appearing alongside one of his partners in an interview or on stage is something that's happened regularly for the last 3 years.
So that's all that we have for today's video, guys. Pretty interesting news report right there. So if you did enjoy, be sure to smash that like button. Also subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.